Okay, welcome.
Welcome.
Episode dose.
Wow.
I know. You know what? I forgot to do the first episode that I really wanted to do.
What was that?
I really wanted to do. I don't know why.
Here's what I'm disappointed in. I did not see that coming.
Well, keep your eyes open this time. You see it that time,
All the way to my head.
right? I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. But I expected to do it last time, and I don't know if it was, rookie jitters or what, but yeah. So now just expect that somewhere along the line, it's going to happen.
Yep. Y'all see what I put up with? I'm just telling.
Yeah, he's gifted with people with special needs, and my need is to abuse him with a pillow. So, it's happened for
30 years.
Yeah, something like that. So this week, a question was asked or has been asked like for a while.
Okay.
And I keep seeing reels on Facebook or somewhere that kind of bother me. And it made me ask the question about worship. So obviously, this is going to date this video, but so much is going on like with Asbury right now.
Right.
And worship in that vein, and want to feed that. We want to feed that and fan that flame and not restrict and isolate it, but let it get out. But I saw a video of if you want to call it, what did you say your brother called them? The mega churches, what did you say, the rock and roll?
He called it rock and roll worship.
Rock and roll worship. So it was a video, and it had a clip of, a large church with lights and smoke and people everywhere worshiping, hands in the air, singing loudly, all together, focused. And they said that's not worship. And then they showed a picture or a video of Asbury where, guess what was happening? Well, there's no lights, there's no smoke, but they were all singing together with their hands in the air, worshiping, going in the same direction. It's like it's the same thing. Just one is flashier than the other. And of course, that person that posted that was basically saying that mega churches are wrong, that kind of worship, that high end, lights and pyrotechnics. And I don't know if any church actually has flames around the pulpit or anything, going off around the drum set, or fake rain. I don't know. But all that stuff, that's not, you can't worship with that. It's fake. So that got me kind of thinking about worship and asking the question should worship be emotional? Because what they say, of course, is, they're just doing all that to get you on some emotional ride, right? And you want to have some emotional high out of it. And that's why you're going. And you know what I did? You're going to have to talk first, because right over there is my backpack, and in that is my notes. And I need those. So
go for it.
you don't ever leave in the middle of the video, right? That's like YouTuber 101. But this is only our second class.
Just us.
So who cares? So close your eyes. I'll be right back.
You leave me all the time.
Does it feel lonely over there?
Yes.
Still have my mic on. So
that's a good question, and I do have some thoughts on that. And but let's get into what you were going to say. And
okay,
I got a few thoughts. So, I didn't bring notes, but
it's all good. You got a phone, so so for me. Okay, so
I was going to say I have all the scripture memorized.
Right, you got the whole cover to cover, right, top to bottom,
scroll to scroll,
including your particular study notes from whatever study Bible you're using, right? You got that in there too.
Absolutely,
it's baked in. So yeah, you baked all right. That was not today. So I'm thinking emotionalism, and I'm thinking, what can I talk about story-wise that can connect me to that thought of emotions, right? And I really, love sports. And I love basketball. I love watching football. I loved playing softball. I love sports. I enjoy sports. I'll put it that way. And when I was a kid, my mom was a Cubs fan and I was a Braves fan because we had cable and you had WGN Chicago for the Cubs and CBS for the
Absolutely.
Atlanta Braves. And so
Remember
she
those
was one
days.
team focused, I was one team focused because that's all we could see because we didn't have a team around us in Oklahoma.
Okay, wait a minute. Dale Murphy,
What about him?
Phil Necro, the nickelballer.
Yeah.
I mean, knuckleballer.
Yes,
Meanest. He
Bob
could.
Horner.
Oh,
Right, these are the days. Rafael Ramirez, Glenn Hubbard. I can go
absolutely.
on, but these guys that nobody knows, yeah, come on.
Garvey played first base, who you
Right,
would never think would play
but
first.
that was not for the Braves.
Did he
You
not
played for the Padres.
He didn't play for the
Now,
Braves.
Popeye, remember he had forearms, like huge forearms.
I remember he was a short
crazy.
guy, so that means he was cool and
Yeah,
good.
that's
So-
it. That's what that is.
We're gonna edit that out.
Whatever helps you sleep at night.
Oh, yeah. The
Even
lies
if
we
it's a
tell
short nap.
ourselves.
It's so anyway, so I was like, okay, sports. I've played a lot, and I've experienced a lot. What are some things? Can I equate this in any way? Because you always get the pastor that's up there. If we can yell for people running with a football, we can yell for Jesus, right? I mean, they're not wrong. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just cliche, right? So I'm watching baseball. It's actually the World Series Game 1, 1988,
Wow.
right? The Dodgers are
we
playing.
are old.
We are old. We are. We are. I was, yeah.
Dodgers, that's who he played
Yeah.
first base for.
So we're watching the game. And of course, we didn't have the big screen. We're watching on 13-inch, where you get up to turn a channel, you're like, for every channel.
Well, yeah, when we were our dad's remote.
Yes, yes, exactly. So I'm watching the game, and this is a long game. I'm going through the whole thing, and it gets to the 9th inning. The Dodgers are down 4-3. And as I'm watching this, one of my favorite baseball players of all time, Kirk Gibson, played for the Dodgers, but he was injured, so he didn't play. He was out. He was a scratch for the whole game. He didn't field, he didn't bat, he wasn't in. 9th inning, they're down 4 runs to 3, rather. And this is game 1. They got to win this to get off on the right foot to go. They pinch hit with Kirk Gibson. He hobbles his way to the plate. I mean, visible limp. He's injured. He's hurt. Both legs are on the injury report. I mean, it's bad. It's like they named one wing of the hospital after the left leg and the other wing of the hospital for the right leg. But he steps up, and I'm glued because I'm like, if they don't do something now, they got a runner on base, but 2 outs. This is the bottom of the 9th. This is what you pretend as a kid you're doing.
Right.
This is the whole thing that you play out in your head. And Hollywood could write this script with Robert Redford in The Natural 1,000 times, and it would never be as good as what I think is about to happen. And I'm watching, and I see him come up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he's gonna hit this out. He's gonna win this game. This busted up old guy that I'd love to watch play, who can't play anymore. This is it. It's gonna happen. And they pitch, and it's Dennis Eckersley on the mound.
Okay, I
Dude
remember
was
Eckersley.
a beast.
Yes.
And that was the problem. And then Gibson swung the bat. He couldn't step into a swing because he was hurt. He couldn't put his body and his weight and shift and get into it. He was hurt. But it didn't matter because the crack of that bat, everyone on planet Earth, glued to their TV or in that stadium, knew what was about to happen. And that ball took off, and he looked up. When he looked up, that was it. He started jogging around the bases, and he started going, limping around. He gets around first base, and there's that iconic fist pump as he comes around because that ball's gone, and the Dodgers win the game. World Series, Game 1, bam, bottom of the 9th, walk-off home run. You couldn't write it any better. They go on. He doesn't play another minute of the World Series.
Wow.
But because of that momentum, because of that moment, they won the World Series that year. And when that bat hit that ball, I came out of my chair and I let out a scream, yeah, because I knew it was gone. And it was palpable waiting for the pitch. Everyone who was in the world watching this game knew he was going to do this. It was going to happen. And there was no stopping it. It was like, this is a force of nature. God has planned and ordained for Kirk Gibson to smash this ball and, for the Dodgers to take it. And boom. And out of me came this roar. I didn't plan it. I didn't ask for it. I wasn't really a Dodgers fan. I was a Kirk Gibson fan. And it just exploded.
Wow.
And I look at it and I go, do I ever do that in worship? And I look at it this way. The game built up to that point. It started off just inning one. And they pitched and they scored and they pitched and they played and they played and they got down to where the tension was the highest. And the player was the greatest player that could be in that position at that moment. And I knew I was there to witness history. And then boom, it happened. When we go to worship, what are we doing before we go there? He was prepared for. God's presence was expected. Did we pitch and play, and did the emotions build to bring it to a point where we could, boom, accept it? Let me grab this. So when I take that story and I take, can worship be emotional? Absolutely it can. And the way that I'm going through that is, which one? I have so many notes. Okay. You ready? Because this kind of blows me away.
Go for it. I want to hear this.
This is an article, right? This isn't Bible, okay? This is an article, The Experience of Being Emotionally Moved, right?
Okay.
From Psychology Today in 2019. Andy Tix is the author. He's a PhD, right? Recently, an international team published new research that goes a long way toward establishing a little-known, unappreciated experience as a universal emotion. Okay, so this is an emotion we haven't really recognized, is what they're saying, right? Based on research. It's called kama mutta, M-U-T-A, mutta, right? After a Sanskrit term. In several studies across 19 different countries, 5 continents, 15 languages, this new research shows kama mutta is a distinct emotion, different from awe, amusement, and sadness, and expresses similarly across cultures, right? There generally isn't a good way to refer to this emotion simply, which says something about how undeveloped and underappreciated it is. Get this. In English, however, people most commonly refer to this emotion when they say they feel profoundly moved or touched in a positive manner. When experiencing this emotion, individuals often become tearful or cry, experience goosebumps or chills or shivers, or feel choked up or a lump in their throat, have a difficult time speaking, and often leave inspired to be more devoted or morally committed. An emotion that we can't name until just now, that we can't pin down, that moves us to a moral change, to a commitment and change, to a difference. It moves us. It's an emotion that moves us. So when you tell me that worship should not be emotional, right, you're insane. Because all you got to do is look at 1 Corinthians 5 or 8, 5 and 6, right? What's it say? Enter his gates with thanksgiving in your heart. Enter his courts with praise. Enter. So expect. Already be ready for that to happen. Already have this prepared. Go into it with that already there. Enter his courts with praise. Don't come into his courts and hope that we get to praise sometime before the preacher preaches. Right? That's not what it says. It doesn't say, when you get to church, then we'll get you all pumped up and ready. If you don't get to church ready, something wrong with you. You're doing it wrong. Because that's what it's for. That's what you're supposed to be experiencing. And what happens is, I think, our life is so busy and our life is so loud and we have so many things that we put that wall up for. I don't want that person in the pew across from me to know that this song moves me. They might think, if I cry, they might think something's wrong with me. If I raise my hand during prayer, they might think that I need prayer and I'm broken, right? We put up walls and barriers for people not to be able to reach who we really are. Guess who else can't reach? God. We have a barrier in the way. So when we're worshiping, of course, it's emotional because the worship team's job is to prepare you to hear the word, prepare you to have that emotional experience. The worship team's job is inning 1 through 9 and 2/3, because once you've got the walls down, God's going to smash that home run and win the World Series. But if you've got the walls up, you're not going to hear it. You're not going to experience it, and it won't move you with a scientifically stated now emotion to a new you, a new moral commitment to change, to better, right? So look at it.
That's
Where are we
good.
at? Psalm 47. Oh, clap your hands. Shout with a voice of triumph. When that ball jumped off that bat, I shouted with a voice of triumph.
Woo.
I was not expecting it, but I knew it was going to happen. But inside me, I didn't know that I was going to let it go. And just boom, was that emotion. In church, in service, in worship, in the car, in wherever you're worshiping, prepare yourself. How do you do that? Let God speak to you through emotions, because that's who we are in our core. When do you tell the truth to people more than any other time? When you're angry. Because then you say what you really wanted to say all these years. Right? You get in a fight finally and you just let it go. Right? Or when do you connect the most with your wife? When you're intimately in touch emotionally in a conversation that moves you both to that true connection.
Absolutely.
It's the emotions that connect us to others, just as it's emotions that connect us to an emotional God. And we're going to get to that, because we're going to open up that story of Lazarus later and see that emotional God that feels everything we feel, that touches deep inside of us because he has felt it himself. Yeah, don't tell me you can't be emotional in worship. Now, do you need the smoke machine? That's pretty cool. But I don't need it, right?
Personally, I've been to those. There's one particular one that I absolutely love to go to, and that worship does move me, and I like it. I love it. I love the lights, and I love all of that. But at the same time, that doesn't make it
Right?
incredible worship. So
So what makes it incredible worship?
I think if emotions are great and feelings are great, but we don't base our life on them.
Right?
We don't make decisions based on them. But if we have made those decisions, that worship will move us. I don't know how to explain that. If I have made a decision in my life to follow Christ, then we will be moved by a song that has him at the center, I think. And I don't care how it's presented, because I've listened to a hymn and it's moved me
Sure.
because of my relationship with Christ. And I think the key is, and you may get to this, forgive me.
No,
Go. Well, I just think in Romans 12:1, I'm going to read the New International Version first, then I want to read Romans 12:1, and I know you know this. It says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship." Wow. Then it goes on to say, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. And I want to read the Message real quick. And I know we're going long. I appreciate you staying with us. But the Message puts it this way by Eugene Peterson. It says, so here's what I want you to do. God helping you. Take your everyday, ordinary life. You're sleeping, you're eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do for Him. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. You'll be changed inside out. And I think and that's what true worship is if Adrian asked me to have a story to tell tonight, and I just remember, and I want to tell a little bit of it. I don't want, because it was so long ago and I've slept a few times since then, but I remember going with a friend of mine to a worship service, and the worship was incredible. And I remember, people were just literally running around, raising their hands, praising God, what we would consider worship. And I remember, and I don't remember what happened. I just remember I was getting in the car, and I don't remember what the gentleman did or if he did anything, but I saw this look on his face, and I was like, okay, what was real? Because it seemed like to me he was treating his wife. I see. I don't want to tell all because I can't remember the way it was, but I just remember this thought in my head going, I don't know what was real. Was that real?
Right.
Or was coming out of that the real?
You were telling me, and I'm going to lay it out there, so you're all soft and easy on them. So basically, it was not just worship that you see or experience on a normal basis. It was worship that a lot of groups have as a normal basis, where it was not just raising their hands in worship, but it was, dancing around, running around, being crazy and extreme to the point where it was just chaos. And then getting in the car, he was rough on his wife. It's like, are you that guy that's so filled with God that you can't control your own body and you have to just go nuts? Or are you this guy who is a jerk to his wife and it's all about you? So that's pretty much what you laid out. So I get where you're coming from. Are the emotions fake? Is that where
I'm coming from is your life transformed, which is your reasonable act of worship? We limit worship to what we see in the songs and all of that, but God is saying no. Worship is everything you do. You're waking up, you're going to sleep, you're going to work life. All of that is completely laid at His feet. And that's our act of worship right there. And if I think that if we limit it to the church building and the music and we will get all out of focus, and we'll make it about style. Yep. And we'll make it about, I didn't like that song, or you should have a hymn, or you should have all this kind of contemporary music, or you should have this or that. But if we completely lay ourselves at His feet every day in everything we do, and we're true in our everyday life. You were a baseball fan. You were a true baseball fan. You were a true fan. And that's why you were like, yeah, just came out.
Yep.
And so what's it based on? Those were my thoughts on it. And I know you may be fixing to use the scripture I was thinking about, so I'm going to let you go ahead and talk.
Probably
now.
not.
I've said too much.
No, you haven't at all. I said a bunch. So maybe I can phrase the question a little differently, because I'm 1,000% where you are on worship is not a service, right? And the people that are comparing or saying this one's better than that one, or
Mm,
this is real and that's not. All they're doing is sowing discord among the brethren, right?
mm,
Which is one of those things the Bible says, I don't think so, Tim. Right? So it's not what we should be doing. It's the
mm.
focus
That's good.
of why are you sitting there trying to nitpick one versus the other or compare one to the other or say, oh, those mega churches are awful. Why? Because they have the ability to have that kind of a service where you've got, one guy and a guitar and that's what you got? Well, that's what you got. Worship God with it. But you can
Mm,
have an amazing fluid worship without having all the extra. Does
mm,
the extra help? It can. Does it hurt? It can. But when the focus is not on Christ,
mm.
then you're not going to be able to worship. You won't be moved emotionally, and you won't be moved to a point where you commit to a change.
That's good.
And so if we don't have it in our everyday life, if I
Mm.
don't worship in my car, and I'm not saying you have to turn on the radio and worship in your car, but I do, right? If I don't do that, then when I get to work, my focus is, and sorry about job, but my focus is job related and people related instead of focusing on God related. And I can't wait to get back and write something and get done with work so I can go write something that is what I'm passionate about. So I'm going to do my best here because these guys that work for me, I may be the only real person that they ever see that's connected to God. I may be their only true connection to Him. I don't want to use that cliche. I hate phrasey stuff. I may be the only Jesus they ever see. Maybe the only Bible they ever read. But it's
Mm,
true. I may be the only real Christian
mm,
they ever meet. Not that I'm judging other people or saying that they're not Christian, right? So the worship, whether it's worship in a big setting or worship in a small group setting or worship in your private setting, it has to be something that comes with a focus from and on Jesus because that's
mm.
it. That's the end. That's why we're worshiping. It's who we're worshiping. If you're worshiping the music or that vocalist or that guitar player, no, you can just get in your car and listen to Tom Petty and enjoy that because it's awesome, but it's not worship. Worship is being moved. It's being changed to a point where you can hear the word of God
Mm,
and receive it and let it attach to you to transform you by renewing your mind. You
mm,
can't, in my opinion, have that happen if you have barriers and walls up to where you can't emotionally connect to God. But then you can go to the far extreme and work up those emotions so that, oh, I'm going to get just nuts today at church. And I've seen the videos, everybody's seen the reels where, it's crazy people at church dancing goofy and they say, oh, it gets better each time. Look at somebody different. And they're just completely out of control. And they're literally mosh pitting and hitting each other and they're dancing like idiots and they have no control of their bodies. And the focus is on whatever their thing is right then, which is somewhat of what you were describing earlier to
mm,
that group. The only time I could find and in the Bible where a spirit gets a hold of somebody and throws them around, Mark 9:17, right? Then one of the crowd answered and said, Teacher, I brought you my son who
mm.
has a mute spirit, and wherever it seizes him, it throws him down. Now there's more. There's
Mm.
seizures and foaming in the mouth, gnashing of the teeth, right? And he becomes rigid or whatever. Oh, you ever see somebody become rigid and, what spirit did that? The only time you see that
Mm,
in this book, that's not the Spirit of God doing it because it puts the focus on that person and that thing that happened to them and their crazy action and their crazy behavior. The focus is not on their crazy stupidness. The focus is on Jesus. And you know what
mm,
Jesus never did? He never told you to act stupid. He never
mm,
told you to flail yourself into a wall. He never said fall down and foam. No, no. Instead, what did he do? He healed that boy. And he took the man that was possessed by a demon that was insane. And he no longer threw himself in the fire or cut himself with rocks. Instead, he was of right mind and he made sense. And he wanted clothes at this point because before he didn't, it stopped being the insanity. Now, am I saying this type of worship is wrong? Well, yeah. But it is what it is, right? But what I'm saying is that any type of worship is wrong if it's not what you said, if it's not centered on Jesus and lived in your life. So if it's not lived out in your everyday life, you can't worship.
If it doesn't change me,
right?
If it doesn't change me.
Right.
If I don't leave different, changed.
And let's go back to a psychologist who's not even, now he may be a Christian, who knows, but this is not a Christian article, right? It describes what happens to people when they have this emotion, right? And often leave inspired to be more devoted or morally committed. How can he be describing anything besides true worship right there? Because I was impacted and I'm going to be different. Because God told me how to be different, showed me what to be different in, and moved me to that. So what's the answer?
I think the problem a lot of people have with that kind of worship, the mega church worship and all of that, is that they believe that the focus is on the show.
Yeah.
And if the focus is on the show, then we get a problem. But I don't think there's anything wrong with making the show excellent, because God calls us to excellence.
Yes.
And using our gifts to the very best and putting our heart and soul into it. But the focus is always on Jesus. So can you have that kind of worship and it be powerful and true? And absolutely, because I love it. And I'm not that I'm showing any bias, but I come back to the scripture where Jesus is with the woman at the well and he's talking to her, and he said there will come a day when those that worship him will worship him in spirit,
there it is,
and in truth. So if it's not centered on truth, and what is the truth? Well, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and life. So
that's good.
I think
that's good.
Yeah, I think we always got to ask ourselves, is this causing me to focus on Jesus? And am I a living sacrifice? And am I moved? Is this moving me to be more devoted? And that's my thoughts on it. And
I'm there, man. I'm there. I mean, that scripture, it's like you could have shut me up before Kirk Gibson and just said, true worship only happens when we worship in, as Jesus said, spirit and truth. And the truth is that it's not about the music. It's not about the lights. It's not about the smoke. It's not about the dancing or the stupid or the crazy, or it's not about the stoic and the liturgical and the patient and the following the steps that we go through every week and the written and the structured. It's not about any of that, right? It's not about the pew versus the chair or the organ versus the drum, right? It's about Jesus, the truth. And when it's not about that, and we haven't lived our life in that to experience that moment, if we haven't done inning 1 through 9, when we get to the bottom of the 9th, we just may strike out. But instead, God pinch hits for me. Right?
That's good.
He pinch hits for me, and the greatest player that can be in that position takes me to a new level. So thank you for hashing through this with me.
It's a personal deal I've been having, because I've got people that say you go to that rock and roll worship, and then I've got people that say, that's the way it is. That's worship. And then I've got people, no, it's not. You don't need all of that. So the older I get, the more I'm coming to a happy medium in my life. And so, and hopefully more discerning. Hopefully more discerning.
There you go.
So
yeah, that's what we got, guys. Thank you for putting up with us and going through that. That was emotionally charged at times. So I think you can tell the difference in our personalities probably by episode 2. And it's a beautiful mix that God has put together in our friendship. And I encourage you to find a place where you can separate yourself from the worship and just worship, because that's what matters. If you're focusing on the worship instead of worshiping, you're doing it wrong.
And that's not a worship leader's problem. That's yours.
Boom.
Now we're in a whole other subject.
What is that you always call that? Because right now you just dropped a truth bomb, right? Just.
So all this, it's just the devil getting us off focus. And you know what? I live my life as a living sacrifice. That is my reasonable act of worship, is what I come back to. And I ask myself, am I doing that? And I got no room to judge.
I'm right there with you. So, any last thought before we sign off?
Yes. Don't abuse your friends.
Abuse is a terrible thing, and a pillow is a horrible thing to waste.
I'm ready now. And he'll probably do it later when I'm unexpected.
It's going to happen. But right now, thank you again for being here. Subscribe, like, share, whatever you say whenever you do these videos. And until next time.
Until next time, maybe I'll remember that catchphrase I had on.
Yeah, you had a good one. You did, but then you lost it.
And I lost it.
And you told it to me. And you're like, hey, this is what I'm going to say at the end. This is it. And I'm like, that's perfect. And you'll sign us off. And then, I got nothing. So there you go.
Until next time.
Thanks, guys.
God bless.